Welcome back to the Ultimate Trumpet Podcast. I'm Adam.
And I'm Bella. Today's episode comes from an article on trumpetstudio.com by Michael Drosty, and I have to tell you, Adam, when I read the title, I actually sat up a little straighter. He's coming after Arban's.
Not just coming after it. He's saying it's the wrong book to hand a beginner. And that is close to heresy in this world. If you've been around trumpet players for more than about 10 minutes, you know that Arban's isn't really treated like a book. It's treated like scripture.
It really is. So let's start where Michael starts. Because he opens with a scene rather than an argument, and I think it's the most persuasive thing in the whole piece. A student walks into his studio carrying a brand new Arban's. Blue cover, gold lettering, 300-some pages, spine completely uncracked. The kid is 12 years old. He's been playing for 7 weeks.
7 weeks?
And his band director had told his mother that this is the book every trumpet player needs, so she went out and bought it, and she was proud of herself for doing it.
And Michael's line there is the one that makes the whole essay work, because he says she should have been proud. She did exactly what she was told by somebody she had every reason to trust. Nobody in that story did anything wrong. The band director wasn't being lazy. The mom wasn't being careless. And the book was still the wrong book.
Which is a much harder argument to make than your band director is wrong. He's saying the entire default is wrong, and everyone participating in it is acting in good faith.
Now, before we go any further, he does something I really respect. He puts his own conflict of interest right up front in about the 5th paragraph. He writes method books, the ultimate warm-up book, the ultimate technical study, the ultimate wedding book. And he says flat out, when I tell you that the most famous trumpet method ever published is the wrong thing to put in a beginner's hands, you are entitled to discount that by however much you think I'm selling you something.
And then he adds, go ahead, I would.
He would too. But then he asks you to follow the argument anyway, because none of it depends on you buying anything from him. And here's the part that closes the door on the objection completely. None of his books are beginner methods either. Everything he's about to say applies to his own catalog just as squarely.
So let's get into it. What is Arban's actually? Because I think most players, myself included until I read this, have a fuzzy picture.
Jean-Baptiste Arban published it in Paris in 1864. And the original title is Grande, méthode, complète pour cornet à pistons et de saxhorn. Read that title and notice what is not in it.
The word conservatory.
The word conservatory. That came later. That came from Carl Fischer in translation for the American market. It is a publisher's marketing decision. It is not a description that Arban wrote.
And that is such a small thing that turns out to be enormous, because complete conservatory method sounds like a curriculum. It sounds like a path. It sounds like the thing you start on day 1 and follow to the end, and when you finish the last page, you're trained. You've arrived.
And there's a second historical detail that lands even harder. Arban wasn't a conservatoire professor when he wrote the book. That came 5 years later in 1869, when the Paris Conservatoire finally established a cornet class and put him in charge of it. The book came first. The institution followed.
So the word that's been shaping how 3 generations of American brass players think about this book is a word the author never used, describing an appointment he didn't have yet.
And here's what actually matters about that. The students who eventually came to him at the Conservatoire already played. Nobody walked into the Paris Conservatoire in 1870 having picked up a cornet the month before. Admission meant years with an instrument in your hands, usually in a military band, usually under somebody drilling you every single day.
He wrote for people who could already make a sound.
That's the sentence. He wrote for people who could already make a sound. Everything else follows from it.
So let's talk about what's missing, because Michael goes through this systematically, and it's genuinely startling once you start counting. Start with breathing.
There's almost nothing, a few sentences in a 300-page book. And think about what has happened in brass pedagogy since 1864. An entire century of work on respiratory function, on wind as the engine of everything, on this simple radical idea that a musical thought comes before a physical one.
Arnold Jacobs.
Arnold Jacobs spent a career in Chicago demonstrating that most brass problems are wind problems wearing a disguise, song and wind. And Michael's whole teaching lineage runs through that, through Jacobs, through Adolf Herseth, through a room full of people in that orchestra who all sounded like they were breathing the phrase before they played it.
And none of that could have existed in 1864.
Right? And that's the fair part of his argument. He's not saying Arban was wrong about breathing. He's saying Arban is silent about it. And for a beginner, silence is worse than wrong, because at least wrong gives you something to push against.
What else is missing?
Ear training. Nothing. Singing what you're about to play. Nothing. Hearing a pitch before you produce it. Nothing. And for a book that is going to be somebody's entire relationship with the instrument, that absence is huge. Because a beginner's first and hardest job is not moving valves. It's connecting an interior sound to an exterior one.
Which is the thing Michael builds everything around. Ears first.
Always. Then tone. The book opens with notes. Quarter notes, scale fragments, intervals, all the raw material of technique presented as though sound production is already handled. And for an 1870 conservatoire student, it was handled. For your 7th grader, that's the entire job.
And this one surprised me the most. There are essentially no long tones.
The most complete method ever written is notably thin on the single most important daily practice in brass playing. Nothing on rest ratios either. Nothing on how long to practice. Nothing on what to do when your face is tired. Nothing on embouchure health. Nothing on how to structure a week.
Because somebody was standing right next to you making all of those calls.
And that's the real point of the whole essay. Arban's instructions are terse because they were never meant to be complete. A professor filled the space between the lines. He decided what to assign, in what order, how many repetitions, when to move on, when to go back, what tempo, what to listen for, what to ignore for now.
So the book is a repertoire of material for a teacher to select from. It's a reference, not a curriculum.
And handed to a beginner without that teacher, it becomes 300 pages of undifferentiated instruction with no priority and no sequence. And the student does the only thing anybody would do with a book like that.
Starts on page 1 and goes forward.
Starts on page 1 and goes forward, which brings us to what Michael calls the gradient problem. And I think this is the most practical observation in the article. The opening pages are musically dead. Page after page of whole notes and scale fragments with no melodic reason to exist. A 12-year-old is bored by Thursday.
And then it accelerates hard.
Having taught him nothing about why any of this matters, the book hits a cliff. So the difficulty curve is flat and dull for a long stretch, and then it's vertical. And Michael's line is, beginners quit on flat stretches, beginners quit on cliffs, and Arban gives them both in the first month.
So how did it become scripture? Because that's the part I keep coming back to. If it's this poorly suited to the job, why is it the default?
3 reasons, and they're all boring, which is exactly why they're convincing. It's the oldest, it's the most complete, and it's public domain, which means it's cheap, it's everywhere, and every band director has a copy on the shelf behind the desk.
It was handed to your teacher, and to your teacher's teacher.
And somewhere in that chain, it stopped being a book and became a credential. And you know the tone. Have you gotten through the characteristic studies? Where are you in the tonguing section? People ask that the way you'd ask somebody what belt they hold.
And credentials become gatekeeping.
And gatekeeping is very hard to argue with, because the second you question the book, you sound like somebody looking for an easier path. Which is why Michael's answer is so good. He says, I'm not looking for an easier path. I'm looking at a 12-year-old holding a book written for adults in another country in another century for a different instrument, and asking who exactly this is serving.
Say more about the different instrument, because that's a real thing too.
He keeps it to a paragraph, which I appreciate. Arban wrote for cornet. Different taper, different response, different aesthetic entirely. The French cornet school valued brilliance and ornament, and the theme and variations showpiece, and the flexibility studies assume an instrument that slurs more easily than a trumpet does. It's a small point next to everything else, but when you play Arban on a B-flat trumpet, you're already making a translation the book never anticipated.
And then he does something I wish more writers did, which is he names where he might be wrong before anybody can do it for him.
3 exceptions. An adult returning player with a good teacher and real motivation can start in Arban and be fine, because that person brings musical experience, patience, and the ability to ask questions. A student who already plays another brass instrument can start there too, because the sound is already in place, and the book is only being asked to do what it does well.
And the third one is the honest one.
If Arban is genuinely the only book available, no budget, no store, a free PDF, and a used horn, a competent teacher can absolutely build a beginner path through it by choosing carefully and skipping most of it. And Michael points out he hosts a scan of the thing on his own site. He's not trying to get it off anybody's shelf.
The book is not bad. The default is bad.
That's the whole thesis in 7 words.
So let's get to the turn, because the back half of this article is not a takedown at all. It's an argument for the book.
And it's not a small turn. He says, once the prerequisites are met, Arban is close to indispensable. So what are the prerequisites? You're ready for it when you have a sound you're not fighting for, when air moves without you thinking about it, when you can play from a low F sharp to a G on top of the staff without bracing for either end, and when reading is fluent enough that you're not decoding pitch and rhythm at the same time you're trying to execute something.
Which is roughly what, 2 or 3 years?
2 or 3 years of good instruction with a teacher who's been paying attention. And at that point, the book opens up completely. The tonguing section is still the best treatment of single, double, and triple tonguing in print, and he says that as somebody with a commercial interest in saying otherwise. The interval and slur studies build flexibility that transfers to everything. The ornament studies teach a vocabulary you'll use in every wedding gig and every pops concert you ever play.
And the duets.
The 68 duets are worth a year of lessons on their own, because playing in tune with another person is a skill no solo exercise can teach. And the 14 characteristic studies are a career-long project, not a semester. He says he still goes back to them.
But that's not the section he'd put in more hands.
No. And this is my favorite paragraph in the whole article. He says if he could get one section into more hands, it would be the art of phrasing. 150 melodies, sitting in the middle of the most technical book in the literature, asking you to do nothing except play something beautiful. No fireworks, no triple tonguing, just line and breath and shape.
And it's the most skipped section in the book.
The most skipped section in the book. And it's also the one that matches everything Jacobs was after, and everything Herseth demonstrated for 50 years in Chicago, and everything Michael tries to get across in a lesson. Song first. Always song first.
The best part of Arban is the part almost nobody plays.
So what do you do instead? He's prescriptive about it. Get a teacher first before any book. Then get a graded beginner method that starts where a beginner actually starts. Sound, air, a handful of notes, and a tune they recognize by the second week. Sing before you play, buzz, play short, play daily, rest as much as you play, and learn songs you actually want to hear.
And put Arban on the shelf where the student can see it.
Let it be the thing they grow into rather than the thing they're drowning in. And then hand it to them in year 3, open to the art of phrasing, and watch what a book written in 1864 can still do for somebody who's finally ready to read it.
And his closing line, which I've been thinking about since I read it, a great book at the wrong time is just a heavy one.
That's it. That's the episode.
Before we go, if you need the latest practice material, be sure to check out the Ultimate Warm-Up Book for Trumpet and the Ultimate Technical Study for Trumpet. If you're getting ready for the gigging season, don't forget your copy of the Ultimate Wedding Book for Trumpet.
And if you want all of it in one place on your phone or your iPad, the Trumpet Studio app has the full library, the articles, and every episode of this show. It's on the App Store.
And if this show has been useful to you, please take 10 seconds and leave us a rating. It genuinely helps other players find us, and it costs you nothing but a tap.
Read the full article at trumpetstudio.com. Thanks for listening. Now go practice.